You get the news, a raise, a bonus, a tax refund that's bigger than you expected, maybe just a paycheck that's a few days away. And before the money has touched your account, sometimes before you've even finished reading the notification, your brain has already spent it. The car service you've been putting off, the thing you've wanted to buy for 3 months, the dinner you've been meaning to treat yourself to, maybe a holiday that suddenly feels justified now that the money is coming. It hasn't arrived yet, but in your mind it's already gone. And when it does arrive, when it actually lands in your account, there's this strange, almost immediate flatness, like the excitement already happened somewhere else, and now you're just processing the transaction. That feeling, that gap between money anticipated and money actually used well, is one of the quietest and most consistent wealth destroyers that almost nobody talks about by name. And once you understand the psychology behind it, you'll see it happening everywhere, including, probably, in your own financial life more than you'd expect. The easy explanation for this behavior is impatience, lack of discipline, the inability to delay gratification. And if that's the frame you're working from, the solution seems obvious. Just wait, just be more patient, just have more self-control. But that explanation misses what's actually happening in the brain. And because it misses it, the advice that follows from it almost never works for very long. This isn't primarily a patience problem. It's a neurological one. The anticipation of a reward activates many of the same pleasure pathways as receiving the reward itself. When you find out a bonus is coming, your brain begins releasing dopamine, not when the money arrives, but when you learn it's coming. The emotional payoff starts immediately, and once that emotional response has fired, the actual money feels less significant when it appears, because psychologically, some of the reward has already been consumed. This is why mentally spending future money feels so satisfying in the moment and so unsatisfying in the aftermath. The peak of the experience was the anticipation. The arrival is almost anticlimactic, and so the brain, chasing that original feeling, starts looking for the next thing to anticipate, the next purchase, the next plan, the next reason to feel that forward-looking excitement. Meanwhile, the actual money keeps arriving and keeps disappearing, not to reckless decisions, to a perfectly predictable neurological pattern that almost everyone experiences and almost nobody has been told to watch for. There's a specific version of this that shows up in a way that feels particularly insidious, and it's worth naming directly. It's the raise that never shows up in savings. Someone gets a meaningful salary increase, 10, 15% more per year, genuinely significant, and within a few months of that raise arriving, their savings rate is roughly the same as it was before, sometimes lower. Because in the weeks between learning about the raise and receiving it, the lifestyle expanded to meet it. The apartment upgrade felt reasonable. The car payment that would have seemed like a stretch before now fits comfortably. The discretionary spending adjusted upward in ways that felt justified by the new income. By the time the first full paycheck at the higher rate lands, the extra money already has somewhere to go. Not somewhere deliberately chosen, somewhere it drifted to while the anticipation was doing its work. This is lifestyle inflation operating at the anticipation level, not just responding to more money, but pre-spending it before the response can be examined clearly. And it's one of the primary reasons that income growth so frequently fails to produce proportional wealth growth. The math is straightforward, but genuinely uncomfortable when you look at it directly. A person who receives a $10,000 annual raise and pre-spends it mentally before it arrives will likely absorb most of it into lifestyle within 6 months. A person who treats the same raise as invisible, who continues living on their previous income and redirects the difference automatically, converts that raise into something that compounds over time. Same income, completely different financial trajectory. The only variable is what happened in the gap between learning about the money and receiving it. The shift that matters here isn't about suppressing the excitement. That's not realistic, and it's not the point. The point is to put a deliberate gap between the anticipation and the decision. When future money arrives, mentally or actually, there's a window. A brief period where the brain is in a reward state, running on dopamine, feeling expansive and optimistic and very willing to commit to things. That window is the worst possible time to make spending decisions because the emotional state you're in is not a neutral one. It's an elevated one, and decisions made in elevated states rarely reflect what you'd choose with a clear head. The practice worth building is simple. When you learn that money is coming, the only decision to make in that moment is to wait, not forever, just long enough for the arrival to feel ordinary rather than exciting. A week, sometimes just a few days. And then, from that more settled place, decide deliberately what the money is actually for. That small gap between anticipation and decision is where most of the damage either happens or doesn't. The most practical thing you can do with this information is create a personal rule around incoming money. Any money that isn't already allocated before it arrives. When a bonus lands, a refund comes through, or a raise takes effect, the default action is to move the unexpected or additional portion somewhere it can't be immediately spent. A separate savings account, an investment account, somewhere that requires a deliberate decision to access, not because you can never spend it, but because spending it should be a considered choice, not the automatic output of an anticipation cycle your brain ran 3 weeks ago. For raises specifically, the most effective approach is automating the increase before you ever experience it as spendable income. If your take-home pay goes up by $400 a month, setting up an automatic transfer of $300 of that amount on payday means you never develop the lifestyle that requires it. You can't pre-spend what you never see arrive. It doesn't require discipline in the moment because the decision was already made before the moment arrived. That's the design. Remove the decision from the emotional window entirely. The excitement of incoming money is one of the genuinely good feelings in adult life. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem is only when that excitement makes the decision for you before you've had a chance to decide anything at all. You're allowed to feel good about a raise, a bonus, a refund. You're allowed to enjoy the anticipation. Just don't let the anticipation do the spending. Let yourself decide, deliberately, from a calm place, what that money is actually going to build. Because the most satisfying version of getting more money isn't spending it before it arrives. It's watching it quietly become something that lasts. That feeling is worth waiting for.